This is Mile High.
Do I want to tell the story or do I want to show the message?
You've got a lot of work to do between Mile High.
The time has come where we can know
we have a responsibility, an ethical and moral responsibility.
We have to do it better in order to move people along.
Up, down, inside out.
If you get your mind right, it is not. It is a receiver of thought. Because love is my first technique.
it's now time for the show.
Welcome to the Mile High Podcast. This is your host, Dr. Daniel Knowles. Thank you for joining us from whatever altitude you are. We are a mile high, actually maybe a few feet higher than that, where we hope you will be in September for Mile High 13. Don't let the 13 scare you. RiseUpToMileHigh.com is where you can get the details. And our guest today is from Sea Level, Florida, that is, but he has been at Mile High, and I think when this airs, he will actually be at Sherman College Lyceum. Dr. John Doc Edwards, DCDACCP, so he's got a whole bunch of letters. He was the founder of Mama's Chiro, which is now part of the Palmer Care Group. He has presented, been part of presenting team at Mile High, and he is one of his big skills is being a snappy dresser. And a transmutation of love and lightning from his piezoforms. He's a clinician, a researcher, a vlogger, an educator, and he spends most of his time as an instructor and researcher for IREPS, for the ICPA, though he'll be presenting at IREPS. Thank you, where we were just talking about. Thank you for joining us today, John Doc Edwards.
I'm honored to be here. Thanks for having me.
I'm really grateful to have you here too. And I forgot to say that you're an award-winning mustache artisan, but you people watching this live may know that.
That's true. I mean, I took second place in a mustache growing contest once, and it was, I think the suit had something to do with it. You mentioned snappy dresser. It's very Fred Barge inspired. He was. Got it.
Well, that's very good. And for people that maybe are not watching this live, and they can go back and make sure they hit subscribe so they can see John Doc Edwards in full glory here. So thank you for joining us. I'm really grateful to have had you as part of Mile High. I'm grateful for all you do for the chiropractic profession through the ICPA. And let's let everybody get to know you a little bit before we dive more into maybe some sciencey, researchy, and pediatric stuff. How did you find yourself in the chiropractic world?
Oh man, I knew I wanted to be a chiropractor since I was 15. Okay. I ended up, wild story. I was taking I was in an English class my junior year of high school, and I ended up, I knew I kind of wanted to be a doctor, but I didn't know what I wanted to do. People pushed me that way, like, oh, you get good grades, you should go be a doctor. I'm like, okay. And I started exploring a lot of different avenues of healthcare, and I didn't end up liking what I was finding. I thought I was too sensitive to actually work in like pediatric. I was ER at the time, just kind of dating myself, right? ER was massive at the time, and I was watching an episode where like the mom is pregnant, she dies, and the baby dies, and I was like, I'm crying. I'm a teenager, right? I was like, I don't want to do that. So I was at my local library, and I found a book on chiropractic. And I read through it, and it actually happened to have the 33 principles in there. And I read through them, and it made so much sense to me. I was like, oh, yeah, the body's, smart on the insides, and it can get interfered with. And that's why people get sick. Okay. And chiropractors could do that with their hands. Okay. So I was probably 16 years old when I sent an interest form to Palmer, and they sent me recruiting materials like as a junior in high school. They kept at me. And it's funny, I grew up in Omaha, Nebraska. My mom had always gone to Palmer grad since I was a kid. And we would drive across I-80 from Omaha to where she lived in New York. And she'd always point out, that's where Dr. So-and-so went to school. So literally I had no idea there was any other chiropractic college. I was a junior or senior, I think, at Truman State studying exercise science in the city where there's a statue of A.T. Still in the town square, the founder of osteopathy, right? Like
Right.
It was Kirksville College of Osteopathic Medicine and Truman State. They're the two colleges in a town of 15,000 people. And there's two chiropractors in town. And I'm in Dr. Sam Pfeiffer's office flipping through a magazine called Today's Chiropractic. And I'm like, this is amazing. It's talking about sports and chiropractic. That's what I was really into. And I looked at the back and said, Life University. I was like, what's a Life University? There's another school, and like my mind was blown. I happened to go to a recruitment thing for prospective students, Lyceum at Palmer, and had two interesting experiences. One was I'm late. I got up late. I ran into this big Lyceum hall, marble stairs. I was supposed to be there for orientation. This super well-dressed dude is like also running a little late, and he slips and he almost bites it on the marble stairs. And I looked at him. I was like, whew, got to be careful of those fancy Italian shoes. But I don't say that in the outside voice, right? I just like in my head. And I sit down in the row, and then like 5 minutes later, he gets up on the stage and introduced himself as Guy Reekman. And I was like, wow. Oh, this is the guy I've been listening to on the tape. And he later on at the end of that said, hey, I'd like all the prospective students to stand up. He had this way of like galvanizing people to like give money, right? And I'd been chatting up this doctor from Ohio. I'm never going to forget her. She said, she really wanted me there. And Guy said, I want everybody who is willing to pay $500 to get the student who's just stood up here to Palmer. And she looked at me and she said, I'm doing this for you. And her husband said, sit down. And she was like, no, I'm doing it for him. And it was just like, whoa, this is powerful, right? Like that was the moment that I understood. Oh, you're seeing my puppy too. This is Summer. I'll tell you about her too. That was the moment that I was like, okay, so this isn't just like a job, right? Like you don't just look at people that you've just met and say, I'm going to make sure you get to this school. It was something else. It was a level of passion that I could really get into. You mentioned the science stuff. I am a nerd. I've always wanted to do research. I left Palmer College thinking I was going to go into research, and it didn't happen for me. So I ended up cooling my heels in family practice, and I kind of fell in love with that instead. But yeah, that's been my journey through it. Was started off as a kid who was super sick and had like asthma and allergies, and I was overweight, and nobody wanted to pick me for the kickball team, and I missed out on a lot of life. And when I figured out in chiropractic college, the reasons why, related to subluxation, how my immune system worked, that changed my life. And when I saw that it was something, it kind of clicked for me that I could do this with children and help prevent some of that stuff. Even if I started working with their moms when they were pregnant, like through epigenetics, I was like, oh man, this is what I've got to do. So, yeah.
It's amazing how people get the chiropractic calling, and it's just like it eats inside, like, oh, this is it. Just once the seed's planted, then they just it grows. I was very similar. I just saw the word chiropractic here and there, and then read, happened to have a book to read, and I was like, this is just mind blowing. How come no one ever told me this? And I was in undergrad there, and but things had been planted all along the way. So then, how do we get into the pediatric area?
Yeah, a little kid named Harry. So I didn't know what I was doing. I went through Palmer thinking I was going to go into research. I worked at the research center for my work study, and I'd applied to like Stanford and Johns Hopkins and all this. And I'm about 2 months away from graduating. and I'm getting all rejection letters. And my boss at the time, who is a DC PhD and sat on the board for the NIH, Chuck Henderson, he said, "So how's it going?" And I was like, "Not good, Chuck." And we kind of went through some of the reasons why. It had something to do with they needed to know me and they didn't. And they were picking out of a stack of things that, I needed to go visit the schools next time I wanted to apply. So I was cooling my heels. I had a good sports background with my undergrad. I was going through sports council early on in school. And so I had gone on a clinic abroad to Fiji back when they were still doing those kinds of things at Palmer. And a friend of mine who was on the trip then went over to Australia to go hang out with her sister who was practicing there. And I happened to run into her while I'm in the computer lab. And she's like, "What are you doing after graduation in 2 weeks?" And I was like, "I've got no idea." And she said, "Well, why don't you go check out Australia? My sister practices there. She loves it." And I was like, might as well, right? So I go down, I interview with the guys, and they're like, "Yeah, we got the sports chiropractic practice," but really the guy just wanted to leave his contract. So he just told me anything I wanted to hear. And I'm sitting in this guy's, like, it's really crazy how it worked out. He had like a converted house that was maybe 6 blocks from the beach on a gorgeous strip of beach called, Mermaid Beach and Surfer's Paradise. And I did a lot of like spinal screenings and farmers markets, and this American accent tends to stand out in Australian farmers markets. So people were just like, "What's that yank talking about?" Yeah. And I met this lady named Tamara who had migraines, and I was like, I don't know if this can help you, but if it's related to subluxation, I think chiropractic's for you. And she asked me about her son Harry, and she said that he had, we'll know it as bowel intussusception, right? But his intestines were kind of glued together, she said, and he had surgery when he was a baby. They called it a shark bite. He had a scar on his belly, but basically had to take Miralax, like laxatives, every day of his life in order to have a normal bowel movement. Wow. She's like, "Do you think you can help Harry?" And I was like, "I don't know. I'm going to tell you the same thing that I tell everybody, which is if it's related to subluxation, he's better off without that than with it. I'd love to give it a shot." Knowing like nothing about adjusting kids. The first kids that I ever adjusted were my little cousins, and it was because my aunt was a really big supporter of just me personally. And I said, "I'd like to try to adjust a kid." So she's like, "Here's my guinea pig children." Right. But I didn't really know what I was doing with kids. And so I adjusted him for about 2 weeks, and he comes in and he says, "Dr. John, guess what?" And I was like, "What?" He said, "My superpowers are on." And that's what I had always said every time I adjusted him. I'm like, "Yeah, your superpowers are on." Just kind of like you fake it till you make it your first year. Right. And he said, Tamara said, "No, he's like, we stopped the Miralax like 3 days ago, and he's been having a bowel movement ever since." And I was like, okay, so like I'm adjusting him like he's a mini adult, and he's like 3. I really probably need to know what I'm doing. And I always loved working with kids. So we had a couple of cool things happen at that point in time in Australia. There was a spinal health promotion program that was going on that got me into some schools. And I really jumped into that with both feet. And then also Jeannie Ohm came down for, it's kind of like, it copies like DE, it's called DG in Australia. And she came down and she spoke, and I still remember watching her. I think everybody has their Jeannie Ohm story. I remember watching her and thinking, wait, there is an organization that takes care of children and they do research. Say less, like I'm in, right? About a year later, I'm at a WFC in Sydney, and I hear this guy talking about the research that lady was referencing. And it was Joel Alcantara. He's the research director for the ICPA. And so like he said he was doing a session afterwards, and if anybody want to come, and I was like front row. I found my notes like after the hurricane, I was like going through books. I found my notes from listening to Joel and all the questions I was asking him. He remembers. He was like, "Oh yeah, you were super annoying." And but I was like, this is like, I got to know more about this. And if I tell people that I have a superpower and it's like I screw up, but I'm not shy about it, I'll tell everybody. And I learned from it too. So there was a lot of just like me, like seeking, right? Like trying to figure this out. And when I ended up back in the US, The ICPA was started a series in Chicago near where I was practicing in Rockford. And I used to drive. I'd go to the seminars. So from then on, I was hooked.
Wow. Excellent. Excellent. So then kids research, we're going to see you, IRAPS, few hours, right? International Research. You're going to be presenting. Can you give a sneak peek of anything of what you're going to be presenting about?
Oh man, I'll tell you, one of the things that you never really know why you get called to do stuff, right? Like my mom has something that she likes to tell me. She said that she was talking to God once and said that he's going to do something really special for women and children. I mean, you hear that like when you're a baby and you're like, I wonder what that's going to be, right? I don't know what it is about how we take care of moms, especially like with mental health. But there is something that every time I talk about it, I like feel it really, really deep. And a few years ago, again, places where I made a huge mistake, Joel asked me to pilot a study with the Quality of Life instrument. It's called the Promise 29. And it's the National Institutes of Health has put this together, and researchers in all kinds of disciplines have used this thing to measure quality of life, everything from pain interference to how well you sleep to fatigue to like that polyvagal concept of satisfaction, social role. All of that's in there. And I developed a way of, okay, at this examination, I'm going to give this, and this, like right before she births, I'm going to give it, and right afterwards, and then 90 days after that. And I was sending them all this stuff. I was just collecting it and just sending it to them, and I wasn't really looking at it. And I got invited to a documentary about perinatal mood disorders. And the statistics on it is that's 1 in 7 moms. It's more common than back pain during pregnancy. Wow. I know. I saw your eyes. So if you aren't watching this, like Danny's eyes just got like this big. 1 out of 7, right? And like I did that too. I was sitting there watching it, and I was doing numbers in my head for how many new patients that were pregnant that I saw that year. And I was like, oh man, I'm seeing this, but I'm not leaving the door open. We probably are kind of similar when we get into the office, we get in our flow, like, hey, what's good? And we focus on that and bringing more positivity in. And I wasn't leaving space. And the worst part though, is that I was asking, I wasn't reading their answers. And that hit me like a ton of bricks. Like that changed me. So I went and I invested in some software so that, basically when they would do the form electronically on a Google form, and then it would report back through Slack, and then it would ping us if we had somebody who was like over the threshold that we needed to see. And along the way, like I got introduced to like what obstetricians in the midwifery community also use, called the Edinburgh Postnatal Depression Scale. And nobody had ever looked at the Promise 29, which has depression and anxiety in as some of the quality of life domains, and the Edinburgh, and looked at that for pregnant women. And so I asked my community, I was in practice like inside a midwife's office for the first couple of years. I moved down to Florida, and I said, hey, can I get access to your chart notes? And so I had like 60 moms, like 30 of them that were under chiropractic care with me at that birth center, and 30 who had subsequently started with me. And I started looking at data and started comparing notes. I got about 5 years worth of like information from those moms. And Joel and I have been publishing studies on that. And one of the things that we did was that we're presenting at IRAPS is when I had them in for the Promise 29 and the Edinburgh, we found some really interesting things. So these moms are right before they birth, like they're like on average 38 weeks pregnant. They've been with me for about 18 visits. I see them about 3 visits later, and they've got a baby. It's like 10 days postpartum. And I'm looking at, the first time and the second time, and how are they doing? Because like I said, like we needed to establish, listen, is it 1 out of 7 moms for the general population? Is it 1 out of 7 moms also in chiropractic offices? And like so I'm going to be talking about our results with that. The really cool thing that I'm excited to eventually do is then talk about that 90-day postpartum study. Because one of the things that I teach for the ICPA is Michael Hall introduced me to the work with visual field screening and functional neurology, and identifying areas of the brain that aren't functioning well, and that they're related to perinatal. Well, I connected that they're related to perinatal mood disorders, but like anxiety and depression. And so if we can screen for this, like as chiropractors, we don't have to be counselors. We can adjust in a very specific way, affect how their brains are firing and actually break this cycle. It's like if there is anybody out there who has questions about whether or not chiropractic is more than like neck pain, back pain, and headaches, I will tell you that how I think that we care for moms is absolutely reflective of like who we are as a culture. And if you're looking for something to dig your skills into to go help your community, mental health for these pregnant women is something that you don't have to, like I said, you don't have to be a counselor. You can be in a very salutogenic paradigm and just adjust, and you will literally save some lives.
Well,
it's pretty.
The thing is, people just don't. They just understanding the relationship of the nervous system to mental health, and people don't put that together. And to have more data on that and more information for people to say, oh, this is something to be aware of is vital, especially during pregnancy, because the ramifications of mental health challenges during pregnancy are significant.
Well, yeah, I credit Daniel Amen for Amen Clinics with SPECT Imaging with being an absolute pioneer at helping to show the neurobiology of mental health. He has I went through his whole brain health certification program and learned all about that stuff. And it was a revelation to me. And it also he gave me some permission too. There's a World Health Organization definition of health that we parrot a lot in chiropractic. We say, optimal physical, mental, emotional, social well-being, spiritual well-being, and not merely the absence of disease or infirmity. And early on in practice, you're pretty confident when you say physical because, you're thinking in a physical way about adjusting somebody and they get, oh man, this is better. I adjusted my mother-in-law's ankle after dinner the other day and she sent me a text about, I can walk again, that kind of stuff, 20 years in your practice, it becomes you expect it. But at first you're 1-2 years in, you're like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. Right. You kind of get the mental side, as I started doing this work, there was a really important study in pediatric chiropractic that the ICPA was involved with that looked at thousands of adjustments. And one of the side effects, in addition to what parents initially brought the kids in for, was the kids were just in better moods. They weren't jerks and just angry and just throwing tantrums. They had better, they weren't as sick as often. They tend to sleep better. I mean, these kinds of things, like the mental health aspect traces all the way back to BJ Palmer and the sanitarium in Davenport, they were taking care of people, with mental health stuff, just adjusting their atlases. And I think it's especially when you start looking into the places where, and this got super personal for me, places of trauma. It was formerly Mama's Chiropractic because in September of 2022, we had Hurricane Ian come to my town and paid us a 17-hour visit at 150 miles an hour. And that just devastated our community. I lost all 3 of our offices. And so I knew, though, thinking from my friend Marcia Schaefer, and I have great conversations about epigenetics, the whole concept about there are things outside of your DNA, things outside your cells that influence what's going to get switched on and what's going to switched off. And she talks about it in a preconception realm about sperm and eggs and what's being formed. And I'm sitting there going, man, I mean, that wasn't the first hurricane I experienced here, but you start stacking trauma onto people, and it changes those cells that are being made. It changes those babies that are being formed. It changes those kids that are being raised, and you start seeing that things like NET and BGI and network, the ideas about tonal work and how that can affect the mind and the emotions. It starts getting really important. It's not just structural. So I needed to upskill with that kind of stuff. But then the social thing with polyvagal theory, Stephen Porges, bless his heart, man, he has also really cracked something for us. Like understanding that's a big part of what I teach when I go state to state sometimes with these ICPA takeovers. I love talking about the social vagus and chiropractic, especially in the perinatal phase. But then even like Eamon, I'll give credit too for like, he talks about like the spiritual concepts. So it doesn't matter really like what religion you are with this. It's about the concepts of compassion and forgiveness and being able to help your neighbor, right? Like if you're under stress and trauma and like it happens, you are like already running from wolves. You don't have a capacity to say, hey, listen, can I get you some water or gas? You know, can I help you like with a generator? Can I help you get food? Right. But if you're like, that's how we build resilience. It's how we build adaptability. If you're adaptable to those kinds of situations, that cracks something open for you that doesn't fit neatly into the physical and the mental and the emotional and the social domains. That's a bigger concept. And I think in chiropractic, we started off talking about it way back in the 1800s. We've gotten away from it a bit, but it's become a place where, 20 years into practice, I love having that conversation about how do we like get people connected to their intuition, connected to senses of things bigger than themselves.
Right.
Through adjusting.
That's, one of the thought processes that drove Donnie Epstein, is like looking really more as what's going on for the person's psychosocial, spiritual experience. I got to ask you this, in addition to teaching and research, chiropractic clinician, all of those things. My understanding is another one of your and also high level mustache artist, snappy dresser. Another one of your skill sets, I understand, is being next to viral videos, being off screen on viral videos.
I think I'm an emotional support animal for some people who are, I give them permission to really lean in, right? Like, if there's anything I can do to help somebody just feel like, hey, listen, this guy is wearing a suit of just like mustaches. I can say whatever I want to say now, right? Like that is, I think, what I do for people. I give them the freedom to be the weirdos that God made them to be. And I think you're referencing my friend. I talked about Marcia earlier. She at Mile High. She and I were part of a panel of ICPA doctors. We have a text thread, and they are some of my best friends. They really are. Ian, who was kind of Ian Schulman, who was emceeing that thing, literally like after the hurricane, he was the reason I was still in practice. He came over with 2 tables, and he said, "Here, let me help you." I used those for about a year as I was working in a bus. Jen Santos, Steph Libbs, Kristen Hosaka, and Marcia. I have individual like stories about each one of them from that polyvagal. Like they gave me safety to be able to grow kinds of stories, right? And Marcia was my first. Like we met each other at an ICPA gathering way back. I think it was like the second one ever done. And she practiced I mentioned I lived in Rockford, Illinois, which is on the state line between Illinois and Wisconsin. And she lived in like outside of Madison. So we weren't very far from each other. And we started talking about what we do and we really clicked. And so I've been just a massive fan and cheerleader for her. And, she says what she says, right? And she stands behind it. And I think it's interesting because I feel the same way about Bruce Lipton sometimes. Like Guy Riekman used to bring Bruce Lipton to campus so often. I refer to him as Uncle Bruce. He just got like, some people are like, it's Bruce Lipton again. I think I'm going to go bowling, right? Like it almost like became one of those things where it's so routine. You just took it for granted. And I think like within the ICPA, we've heard her talk about the concepts that it's so empowering, right? You have so much control over the cells that are being created for you, that everything belongs in this ecosystem, and you got to clean up the ecosystem before you start figuring out how to fix it, because that's a very mechanistic way of looking at it.
Right.
Like if we're honest about like the power of the body, like you got to give it the building blocks in order to make it work well. And that's not just food, right? That's like emotion, that's exercise, that's water. There's a lot to like glyconutrition. There's a lot to this. And so she has been just telling the truth that fertility isn't just a women's issue for a real long time, and helping men understand, hey, listen, you're making a lot of cells and they aren't doing so hot, as statistically speaking in this generation, and you got to fix it. And she said it. And the ICPA has a really interesting thing that they're doing where we're, like I said, I mentioned these takeovers that we do, and sometimes we'll get video and we'll cut pieces of our amazing instructors like saying stuff, and she says it and it gets on TikTok, and it's like I'm watching like, oh my gosh, she's up to 500,000 views today. I was sitting there watching. I was watching football, and I'm refreshing this, and I'm going, oh my goodness, Marsha, you're like, I think I sent her. It's like, woo, girl, right? A million and a half. And I was like, Justin, look what you're doing. Go, girl.
Yeah, I know.
But this is the thing, right? You can get a hit on a video, but if there isn't anything to back it up, right? Like, is that helping catch the people? She said in this texting thread with you guys, she's like, are we catching the people upstream, right? Like, are we arguing about like technique stuff right now that just kind of we care about inside baseball? Or are we going after those people, the 90% of people who aren't getting adjusted, right? The probably 99% of people who aren't getting adjusted for preconception care, and helping them understand the connection between their nerve system and their body, right? Like,
right. And
what are we doing about that?
And also their nerve system in the kids that haven't been born yet, right?
Amen. So, that's it, right? Like,
we've said that as chiropractors forever, but public head doesn't know.
Well, we said it in a joking way,
right? Well,
we said it in the way of like chiropractors get their patients pregnant, right? Because it was so unintentional. We were just doing our jobs, and people's bodies started working differently,
right?
And that is like. That's that kind of work that I love talking about, which is the intentionality. Like, if there's anything that I have become super clear on, it's like my mission is to help. If people want to get Webster certified, like, that's awesome. But my job is to get like the people who are interested in perinatal care, like preconception through postpartum, 30% better than where I'm at. And that's what wakes me up in the morning. It's what keeps me up at night. That is like, because I like the vision I have in my head is that when she gets a positive pregnancy test and she's thinking about who her birth provider is, I want her to also think about who her chiropractor is going to be. Right. We are not there. We are definitely not there yet. We got a little like clutch of people who are our fans, right? But globally, we're still fighting for like safety, recognition, right? That we're not out there like killing people, that we're not causing strokes, that we're like, it's okay to adjust somebody cervically, that, it's okay to adjust a baby. And so we have some social proof to do, but from regulation standpoint, we as an organization have some research to do to help people really get that we aren't just blowing smoke here. Like, it used to be, I'm old enough to be in a place where I would listen to people say, we don't need research. Chiropractic is self-evident. People, let your patient speak for you. It's all grassroots, and I'm like, we tried it.
Yeah.
We got to the exact same place where we were when you said that, maybe a little further back.
Yeah. We don't need research. I know. It's horrible.
You can fit the number of full-time researchers in a short school bus for this profession. And
exactly. Exactly. And that's sad. And, we're grateful for the work you and other people at ICPA and other researchers do. There's so many people connected to the Foundation for Vertebral Subluxation Research.
Yes.
And we need more of that. Schools need to do more of that. We've also a whole nother can of worms, for sure.
Public appetite's increasing for it, though, I see.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So like Andrew Huberman is a really good example. I got an opportunity to listen to him last month. And I'm sitting there, like I always, I have two things going on in my head all the time when I'm listening to people on stage. I think about what they're saying, but I also think about how they're saying it. I'm always trying to learn. And one of the things that he is and that he represents is a neuroscientist from Stanford. And he has a very successful podcast as a neuro geek from Stanford. he's a very handsome dude. That doesn't hurt him, right? So, but at the same time, like he's talking about things that like this biohacking like thing isn't going anywhere. Longevity, people are going to want to continue to live longer. And like people like that have been tapping into this for a while. Like chiropractors, we've been there for 130 years, and they're just starting to figure out the stuff we've been talking about. And so, like, I think we've got a lot of commonalities in like I think we're approaching the golden age between that and AI, where we like some of the barriers, quite honestly, for me publishing more has been the time I spend in practice and managing patients. It's part of the reason that I sold to Palmer Care was because I didn't want to, I got a message clear as a bell that I wasn't supposed to be running 3 offices anymore. I was supposed to be leaning into this kind of stuff. And so but part of it is just like the time it takes to write and collect data and analyze it and all that. And quite honestly, I was talking with Heidi Havoc also last month at Parker Vegas, and one of our mutual friends is like the AI guru in New Zealand, and he helps her crunch a lot of data. Imran's on a ton of her paper. He's like it's her right hand. She could not do the work without that. And he's leaning into tools that I think, like in our profession, we are early technology adopters. Like, how long have you been doing this podcast for? Right? Like that's us as a profession. We will buy the shockwave thing. We will buy the fancy gadget. We'll do lasers. We'll do all kinds of stuff. We're early technology adopters. And I think we can get into that with research. And I think we can like really accelerate what we're doing. So,
well, here's the thing. Our world, look at right on here, like watch,
yep.
Right? And Whoop. Like the world has become more technology savvy. They expect to use body metrics and wearables, right? And then we think like, and I love the Insight Subluxation Station. I use that. There's lots of other technology people use, but like people would, if they are wearing things like this or the Oura Ring, they're expecting a chiropractic office to have some kind of technology to show what's going on, and that's not just just feel it and just imagine it, right? They're a more educated public.
Yeah, I think it gives us, I think the making heart rate variability consumer friendly was one of the biggest signals that chiropractic is going to blow up. Because it's the balance of your nervous system, right? And it's like, hi. So I love dipping in that conversation. I mean, I read just like on my commute, it's like, I need to know this, right? I need to be able to talk about what he's talking about.
And again, people plugging into AI, and they'll get that information easily too. So, the times have changed, and us having more research is vital for the chiropractic profession. There's lots of other things we do too, but research is a major one. So let me ask you this: now? Obviously, you're highly involved with the ICPA. Your research and teaching. Last thing to wrap up towards here. What is, if people have not been involved with the ICPA, what would you like them to know about the ICPA, and what would you like them to know about learning more?
Oh, absolutely. Thank you for that opportunity. So I joined the International Chiropractic Pediatric Association because I felt a level of insecurity in practice. I didn't feel like I really knew what I was doing, quite honestly. I was 7 years in practice when I took my first ICPA class. To tell you, where I was. Okay. And when every time I took a class, it was super, super apparent that the person at the front of the room was the man or the woman in that aspect of what they were teaching. Like they knew it. They literally wrote the book, right? And so from an education standpoint and CE standpoint, I don't think for me that there is a better educational series for family practice than the curriculum we've put together. We listened to our members when it came to pregnancy because it was just Webster, and then it was my class. And there were a lot of us who were seeing a lot of pregnant women, and we said, what else do we need to upskill in order to really be these doctors? Right. And so we created a entire perinatal certification. We have an entire pediatric certification, and then there's a diplomate. So like, if you're looking for training, like there's 9,000 members in our organization now. A lot of it had to do with the quality of our online content, because you can sit at home and watch stuff, but we are all over the place internationally too. I'm on the road at least once a month doing live hands-on work, teaching exam and teaching technique. The second thing about it is that it is you mentioned chiropractic colleges and research. When we see each other, I want you to count how many presenters are ICPA docs.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we actually produce more research as an organization than most chiropractic colleges do.
Wow.
Yeah, and we're not for profit, right? We're all self-funded, and so that's not to knock chiropractic colleges, but like it's a gauntlet, right? It's like we are setting that standard because we have to. Like there are children in Australia right now who need to get adjusted, and chiropractors are afraid to do it because there was a whole brouhaha that ended up with the board saying you can't touch kids without special training.
Right.
And so like, well, where's that special training coming from? Where's your evidence base? That's on us. That is us producing. And the third thing too is that public education piece. My friend, I've become super good friends with the Ohms over the years. The dog that you just saw was Jeannie Ohms' grand dog.
Wow.
She's a ChiroDoodle. She is Lisa Geiger, who's one of our instructors. She had a dog named Webster, who's an Australian cocker dog, and Jeannie had a dog named Brisby, who's a mini sheepadoodle. And a month after I had
it's a new breed. I didn't know.
The ChiroDoodle, hashtag ChiroDoodle, it's going to blow up. So Justin calls me up a month after our daughter's born, who we named Jeannie. And he says, hey, listen, Jeannie's dog just had puppies. I've got them in the office. Everybody loves them. You should really think about it. Like they're hypoallergenic. They're meant to be therapy dogs. We got ChiroDoodles, like polyvagal puppies. And I was like, Justin, dude, like I literally just had a baby. My wife is not going to go for this. And he said, but it's Jeannie's grand dog. And like Danielle walks in and says, okay, tell me the story, right? Like she's our professional. So, but one of those ohms that is just like near and dear to my heart is John, who's the publisher. He's the editor for Pathways to Family Wellness magazine. We have a podcast too, and John curates. He took the reins after Jeannie passed of being the editor of Pathways, and is doing a phenomenal job of talking salutogenesis, the vitalistic chiropractic lifestyle, all those things that. Like our patients feel kind of like weirdos, right? Like they're choosing about what they're putting in their kids' bodies, and that might be different than their neighbors. They're choosing how they educate their kids, and that might be different than their neighbors. They don't see these values reflected when they watch the nightly news. And so we have a home for them in this website, in this magazine. It is a public education outreach resource that I try to get issues into every single one of my new patients' hands. I like literally dog ear articles and say, these are for you, right? And that is an ICPA venture. It's about getting the chiropractic family wellness lifestyle out there to people. And I don't know anybody who's as successful at it as we are. It's definitely if people are, I remember struggling in practice. I remember like I didn't want to practice. I was going to get out of it. I was going to go do video podcasting and do research, and I was done. I was burnt out. And the ICPA saved my career because it showed me, hey, listen, women need you, babies need you. If we're so concerned about even just your own children and their friends and the coming anxiety epidemics and the coming chronic disease epidemics, please upskill. Please know that you have a home with us. So yeah, that's my commercial.
Well, and I want more and more people to get dialed into the ICPA, and by supporting it, you're also going to be supporting research, and basically you're going to be supporting more kids getting care. And
exactly right.
The information has to be there for people to feel like they're making, because we're in an informed choice generation. We're an informed consumer. That's what I meant. Consumer generation. People aren't going to go to something that they're going to look at their phone pretty darn quickly about something before they do it. So that has to be there for them to say, I'm going to step forward. It's not like the 70s, 80s, where, people are just going to go solely on person's charisma. You've got a lot of charisma, but you got to go beyond that.
Well, listen, that's what, and I know you want to wrap up, but that's what makes this work that you're doing so important.
Oh, thank you.
Also, when I was, listening to all these awesome speakers, Gary Vaynerchuk, Gary V was up there, and he said, AI voice search is going to eat your lunch if you're just living on Google search. And the way that it's doing it is it's listening to voices, and in the voice closest to the consumer is the one who's going to win. And I think about like that battle, right? That battle for the hearts and minds of people in healthcare and how they want to choose resilience and choose adaptability and make their kids stronger, right? And so I think about those kinds of things, and I think about things like what you're doing with your podcast and what you're doing with Mile High. And I know that like, as you put that out onto the various platforms, that gives the AI spider crawlers like robots something to latch onto. And so the more you do these kinds of things, the better our profession gets. So I'm eternally grateful for this kind of work.
Oh, thank you for saying that. Thank you so much. And thank you for your contribution. Thank you for being at Mile High. It was so awesome to have you there. And the whole, how the ICPA docs showed up. It was, you guys brought the fun. So that was, that was good. So, and, plus you're kind, right? So dude,
just trying to live up to it, man. I wear the t-shirt sometimes and I'm having a rough day, and it's a good reminder to myself,
Well, today I didn't go with I usually do a Mile High t-shirt. Today I'm wearing a Jeep t-shirt because I was running.
Hey man, I got a Jeep too. I'm a 7 Slot Mafia myself, so right there with you.
So awesome. Well, and thank you so much for your contributions to chiropractic and to kids everywhere. Again, everybody's listening, make sure you hit subscribe. Look, after this, you never want to miss any Mile High Tech. So just whether it be on Spotify or iTunes, whatever it might be, hit subscribe. And of course, be on higher ground in September. I know nowhere else you want to be other than at 5,280 feet, September 23rd weekend in Colorado. The leaves are going to be changing. It's beautiful. Just rise up to milehigh.com. And thank you again, Dr. John Doc Edwards. I appreciate all you do. Keep changing spines, lives, and minds with chiropractic.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate you.